We're live now.
Okay.
And we are live.
Right, the clock says 1 o'clock, so welcome everyone to this virtual cabinet meeting of Shropshire Council. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public are able to hear and view the papers. The papers will be displayed during the broadcast of the meeting. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any cabinet members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the telephone number previously provided. Councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. As leader, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of Cabinet to confirm their presence and any interests. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the Cabinet, group leaders or officers, to introduce themselves before they speak. Right, thank you. So item 1 is apologies. Now, I've got apologies from Gwilym Butler and also from Councillors Roger Evans and Councillor Alan Mosley. Amanda, is there any others?
There's no others, Leader.
OK, thank you. Right, so items 2 and 3 are the roll call and disclosable pecuniary interest. So as I read each cabinet member's name out, if they'll just respond and state if they've any interest. So Gwilym Butler has given his apologies. So Councillor Lee Chapman.
Present, Leader, and no pecuniary interests.
Councillor Steve Charmley.
Yeah, present, Leader, no pecuniary interest.
Councillor Dean Carroll.
Present, Leader, no pecuniary interests.
Councillor Steve Davenport.
Yeah, present and no pecuniary interests.
Councillor Rob Macy.
Present and no interest.
Councillor David Minery.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Leslie Picton.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
And Councillor Ed Potter.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
OK, thank you. Now the group leaders, Alan Mosley's not here. Pauline D. If you can confirm your E.
Yeah, I'm here, Leader, and no pecuniary interest.
And Councillor David Vasmer, who is attending on behalf of Councillor Roger Evans.
I'm here and no interest to declare.
And the other members I've got on my list who have requested to speak are Councillor Ruth Houghton. Ruth, are you there?
Present and no interest.
And Councillor David Turner.
Thank you, Leader. No,
Okay.
present, no interests.
Right.
Leader, we've also got Councillor Julian Dean, who has joined the meeting.
OK, Julian, can you just confirm your presence and that you've no pecuniary interests?
Yes, present and no pecuniary interests, thanks.
Right, and the officers in attendance are Mark Barrow.
Here, Leader.
Andy Begley, Chief Executive.
Present, thank you, Peter.
Karen Bradshaw, Director of Children's Services.
Present, Leader, thank you.
James Walton, Interim Executive Director of Resources.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, present.
And Claire Porter, Director of Legal and Democratic Services.
Yes, present, thanks.
And next on my list is Amanda, but we know Amanda's here because she's been speaking already. Right, so we move on to item 3 of the minutes. But the minutes of last week's meeting aren't ready yet, so they'll be presented to Cabinet on 18th of January next year, the next meeting. So we move on to item 4, which are public questions. The first question is from Chris Tyler on behalf of Much Wenlock Neighbourhood Plan Refresh Group. Claire Porter, are you going to do the talking today?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'll read this question out for Chris Taylor. And his question is, How can Shropshire Council embark on the Regulation 19 consultation, including a preferred scheme in Much Wenlock that was attracted so little support and which deliberately and unthinkingly overrides the statutory neighbourhood plan, which sets out the aims of the community for the future of its town? Does this not mean that there will be a significant risk to Shropshire Council? Leader, can I just make it clear there was a lot of preamble with this question, and there will be preamble to other questions and statements and opinions. I won't be reading those out, but I want to make it very clear to the public that that has been seen by all Cabinet members and officers who advise the Cabinet. Thank you.
OK, thank you, Claire. And I'm going to ask Councillor Robert Macy to respond. Rob?
Thank you, Leader. Since 2017, Shropshire Council's undertaken 5 separate stages of consultation into the emerging local plan review, including 2 periods of consultation on draft site proposals in Much Wenlock. It is recognised there is an outstanding objection to proposed strategy for the town, and these objections have been fully considered alongside other material considerations in arriving at the Regulation 19 version of the plan, which is subject to a further period of consultation between December and February 2021. The proposed strategy for Much Wenlock in the Regulation 19 version of the plan has regard for the current neighbourhood plan for the area. However, the local plan must also plan positively for the town for the period 2016 to 2038, a period well beyond the end of the current neighbourhood plan timeframe. As things stand, it is understood there is no intention from the Town Council to undertake a full review of the neighbourhood plan. It is considered, therefore, the risk to the soundness of the local plan would be if the local plan did not positively plan for Much Wenlock up to 2038. All residents, alongside other stakeholders, will have the chance to comment on the soundness of the local plan as part of the upcoming consultation on the Regulation 19. And all these comments will be seen by an independently appointed planning inspector when the plan is submitted to the government for examination, currently scheduled for April 2021.
Thank you very much, Rob. Back to Claire Porter. Claire, the question from Mike Bastow.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This question states, as the Council's report advises, the Council's emissions and plan address 1% of the county's emissions. Can the Council advise, since declaring an emergency in the spring of 2019, the actions and plan for county emissions? I would be interested to hear about action on housing plans, transport plans, circular economy waste policies, and influencing business investment in reducing emissions and biodiversity destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll to respond. Dean?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Bastow, for your question. As indicated in Section 8 of the Cabinet Report and Section 9 of the Corporate Strategy, Shropshire Council is one of the key founders and supporters of the community-led Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, otherwise known as SCAP, which has set the objective of achieving net zero carbon performance across the county of Shropshire by 2030. SCAP is currently preparing a county-wide climate strategy and action plan, which should be published by the end of December. Further information about all the topics identified will be made available on the SCAP website, which is zerocarbonshropshire.org. Mr. Bastow, if he's interested, may like to consider signing a carbon reduction pledge or joining SCAP and contributing directly. Thank you.
OK, thank you very much, Dean. Question 3 is from, I hope I'm saying this right, Joanna De Rycke. Claire?
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this is to do with the Shrewsbury swimming pool. The council is potentially facing a huge deficit over the next 5 years. How can this project be financially justified when the cheaper option would be to improve existing efficiencies? How can building additional health club spa facilities at the quarry site be financially justified? Why replace a 33-metre pool with a 25-metre pool? Why take the competition pool out of a prime location and put it in Sundawn, a location with limited public transport, no places to stay for competitors and traffic issues in that area? The existing 33-metre competition pool is used from 6:30 a.m. until 9 p.m. at night and is always busy. How will this demand be met at this location? Thank you.
OK, thank you, Claire. I'm going to ask Councillor Leslie Picton to respond. Leslie?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and I apologise in advance that a lot of the answers for these questions are going to be repeating questions from before, if you get my drift, but we will continue. So in answer to Joanna's question, the Quarry Swimming and Fitness Centre was built in 1969, and building condition surveys consider the facility to be at the end of its economic lifespan, and the development of a new facility will provide a modern fit-for-purpose centre. Currently, none of the existing pools are of a standard size. 33-metre length pools are not recognised by any international swimming federations or Swim England. 25 and 50-metre pools are the recommended lengths. The fitness suite is very small and there are no fitness studio facilities. The latter impacts on our ability to generate income. The changing rooms are not of a modern design. The building sadly lacks Disability Discrimination Act access and is increasingly expensive to operate given the planned maintenance issues. The existing facility at the quarry will become increasingly expensive to operate as building elements continue to be retained beyond their effective lifespan. Replacement parts and materials are more difficult to source, and fixes that are workarounds rather than genuinely satisfactory solutions have had to be adopted. Increasing energy costs and pressure to reduce the carbon footprint to meet the Council's climate change commitments will become unsustainable within the current building fabric. Continuity of service will become increasingly difficult to maintain as crucial elements fail and are not cost effective to replace. Deterioration of core elements of the facility at the quarry affecting health and safety, risks resulting in difficulty sustaining public swimming provision in Shrewsbury are there for the long term. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated that due to the design of the building and the capacity of heating and ventilation plant, it has not been possible to fully reopen the facility to meet COVID secure requirements. Without significantly rethinking provision, there is now a risk of a reduction of provision, loss of users to alternative facilities and decreasing footfall to the quarry and wider town centre, which again reduces our income. The next part of the question relates to how can building additional health club spa facilities at the quarry site be financially justified? Improving the leisure offer at Quarry through the provision of modern up-to-date facilities provides the potential for customers to extend their visit to the facility, thus increasing the likelihood of revenue generation and improved operational financial efficiency. The inclusion of other commercial activities and opportunities such as health spas, adventure play, cafes and bistros at the quarry site have the potential to contribute to the overall viability and therefore affordability of the project. The above points are subject to additional due diligence being carried out, which is what the report to Cabinet recommends takes place between now and the summer of 2021. With regards to why replace a 33-metre pool with a 25-metre pool, as I said earlier, 33-metre length pools are not recognised by the International Swimming Federation. In fact, there is some question as to whether the 33-metre pool was built is actually a mistake in the first place, but that's another story. It's basically 25 or 50-metre pools are the recommended lengths. The planned pool provision is therefore in line with national standards of swimming pool design. Why take the competition pool out of a prime location and put it in Sundorne, a location with limited public transport, no places to stay, etc. The placement of competition facilities at Sundorne Sports Village provides for this use at a location which is accessible from across Shropshire, Shrewsbury and the wider region, at a venue which will be better equipped to deal with the parking implications of competition swimming. Just pointing out once again that the competition venue is for the whole of Shropshire, not just Shrewsbury. The next part of the question is the existing 33-metre competition pool is used from 6:30 AM until 9 PM at night and is always busy. How will this demand be met at this location? The current proposal includes a 25 metre by 4 lane pool with movable floor at the quarry site, which provides opportunities for club training, lane swimming and provision of swimming lessons in the town centre. The dual site option with a mix of swimming and other facilities at both sites provides an opportunity to increase and improve access to leisure facilities for communities across Shrewsbury and Shropshire. We want to offer a better quality swimming offer, which is more accessible to more people. Facilities increase participation from existing users and enables new users to take part for health benefits that capitalise on the town centre and other infrastructure and is operationally sustainable in the long term. This means being flexible in our approach and rethinking what aquatic opportunities best fit need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. We move to question 4, which is from John Brownie. Claire?
Thank you, Leader. Why are you considering moving the main pool centre out of the town centre? It is difficult for main users and the elderly to gain access and will increase car usage and our carbon footprint. Why are you potentially taking business and tourism from our town centre again? Thank you.
Okay, I think we're back to Councillor Leslie Picton. Leslie?
Thank you, Leader, again, and my apologies for repeating answers. So in answer to the first part about taking the pool out of the town centre, the proposal includes for a 25 metre by 4 lane pool with movable floor at the quarry site, which provides opportunities for club training, lane swimming and provision of swimming lessons in the town centre. The dual site option with a mix of swimming and other facilities at both sites provides an opportunity to increase and improve access to the facilities for communities across Shrewsbury and Shropshire. We want to offer a better quality swimming offer, which is what I've said before, more accessible, more people, increased participation from existing users and enables new users to take part. Provision of new facilities designed to be low carbon in their performance is intended to help address the carbon footprint of swimming in Shrewsbury for the long term. In answer to why are you potentially taking business and tourism from our town centre again, I do think people need to realise we're not removing the pool from the quarry. We are absolutely providing the pool. In fact, we're providing a lot more. We recognise that there is a need to invest in a high quality leisure destination offer in the town centre that retains the opportunity to swim, whilst recognising that the county does not currently have a modern competition swimming pool, which the Sports Village location has the potential to accommodate, providing a Shropshire-wide swimming facility. We are exploring whether the proposed redevelopment of the quarry site can facilitate the development of complementary uses, partnerships and or possibly commercial opportunities in line with the Big Town Plan, so that whilst the project is not dependent on this, we maximise the potential of the site and reflect its unique setting in the town. This will explore opportunities for additional income generation from any associated facilities, within the destination leisure offer, again, bistro, cafes, etc., and how the facility can also link with the wider quarry open space and assets such as the river. Proposals include for the provision of a leisure fun water in any redevelopment of the quarry, in addition to the 25 metre 4 lane pool. And the aim of this is to create a destination leisure venue for residents and visitors, which is aimed at providing a new attraction in the town centre and encourages footfall in and around the site. The addition of leisure water will also engage more people in leisure activities and physical activity who may not traditionally participate in a more formal swimming offer. The development of the quarry site will link into and support the wider quarry park and enhance the visitor officer within the town centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Question 5 is from Bernard Wills. Claire?
Thank you, Leader. This is another question about the swimming pool. Why is it being proposed that the competition pool be sited at the Sports Village, Sundawn, and not at the quarry site? Why is the proposed swimming pool at the quarry centre only the size of the present Priory pool, 25 metres times 4 lanes? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, sorry. We recognise that there, again, I'm going to be repeating a lot of this. We recognise that there is a need to invest in a high quality leisure destination officer in the town centre that retains the opportunity to swim, whilst recognising that the county does not currently have a modern competition pool, which the Sports Village location has the potential to accommodate, providing a Shropshire-wide swimming facility. We want to offer a better quality swimming offer which is more accessible to more people, facilitates increased participation from existing users and enables new users to take part for health benefits, that capitalises on town centre and other infrastructure and is operationally sustainable long term. This means being flexible in our approach and rethinking what aquatic opportunities best fit the need. The placement of competition facilities at Sundawn Sports Village provides for this use at a location which is accessible from across Shropshire, Shrewsbury and the wider region, at a venue which is better equipped to deal with the parking implications of competition swimming. The dual site option with a mix of swimming and other facilities provides an opportunity to increase and improve access to the facilities for communities across Shrewsbury and Shropshire. There is a little bit more actually, which I'll just carry on if you don't mind. The original Sport England funded report, dual site options, suggested providing a 20-metre community pool at the quarry site, but we have considered comments made by the stakeholders, and the proposal is now to include a 25-metre by 4-lane pool with movable floor at the quarry site, which provides better opportunities for club training, lane swimming and the provision of swimming lessons in the town centre. And as I've said before, the addition of leisure water area will create a destination leisure venue and importantly engage people in activities and physical activity who might not normally take part in traditional swimming. The proposed competition facility at Sundawn, including a learn pool, can also provide for club use, competitions, casual swimming and swimming lessons. This provides for a versatile water offering, providing for competition, training and leisure swimming opportunities, which are accessible for communities across Shropshire and Shrewsbury. Subject to approval by Cabinet of the recommendations being considered today, the next stage of design for the two sites will be undertaken in the coming 6 months, following which a full public consultation will be undertaken to examine how the proposals can deliver the best outcomes possible. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leslie. We move to question 6, which is from Rob Wilson. Claire?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, this is the last public question today. Will the council facilitate more school streets following the successful pilot at Colam Primary School? If so, how will these be selected? Is there a process by which local communities can request them? I welcome that the council is now looking at the trial low traffic neighbourhoods in Shrewsbury. Where are these planned for? How and when will the local community be engaged and consulted to ensure success? I welcome that the council is finally committed to developing a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. Is there a senior officer taking charge of active travel? If so, who? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Davenport to respond. Steve?
Yes, Rob, thank you for the question. In its report to the Council in September regarding 20-mile-an-hour zones outside schools, the paper outlined that all 150 schools in the county would be reviewed for appropriate measures ranging from do nothing to 20-mile-an-hour zone only signs to 20-mile-an-hour zone with additional traffic calming to form a school street. The traffic and accident data currently being collected to identify which measures may be most appropriate for each site and prioritise a programme of engagement, and school leaders have already been briefed on this. A consultation exercise will therefore be undertaken for all sites, at which point local communities will be able to help shape final proposals. Funding is limited for such measures, and therefore in the first instance school streets will be targeted where the greatest needs are identified. It should be noted that there will have been social distancing concerns raised due to COVID-19. We have responded to those concerns from education colleagues and local members. School streets was the appropriate intervention, thus a distinction from the planned and programmed approach, which the development and the responsive approach to this support with immediate concerns. The second part of the question, the trial of low traffic neighbourhoods in Shrewsbury is proposed for town walls. Initial engagement with residents associations has already begun. It is not possible at this stage to identify further consultations, but will take place as timing dependent on COVID measures in the town centre. The last part of the question, all senior officers in highways are committed to developing active travel. However, Steve Brown will be leading the development of the council's active travel strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's all the questions from members of the public. So we move to item 5, which is questions from members of the council. And there's a question from Councillor Ruth Houghton. Ruth?
Thank you, Leader. What local employment opportunities have disappeared because of the COVID epidemic for young people? And what plan does Shropshire Council have to alleviate this problem, i.e. what job creation schemes are being developed locally? I understand the Shropshire Council have formed the Shropshire COVID Recovery Economic Task Force. Can the membership of this be confirmed and an update provided on its plans for the next 3 and 6 months, and give confirmation of when a full report will be made available to councillors? And finally, as a result of COVID, the related rise in unemployment may lead to a rise in citizens being unable to pay their rent or mortgage and a subsequent housing crisis. What plans do Shropshire Council have in place to anticipate and mitigate this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, for the question, and I'll respond myself. It is not possible to fully quantify employment opportunities, but the information we have from the DWP is that within the age group 18 to 24, the number of universal credit claimants has risen from 809 in January this year to 1,957 in October. The Council has been supporting and signposting small and voluntary organisations to access much needed funding, such as ESF community grants, offering grants of 5,000 to 20,000 for local initiatives that will help move unemployed young people towards employment, training or education. There are other ESF funded programmes that can support young people get into employment or training, things like Landau in 2, the programme which we have signposted young people. We have been working in partnership with the Shropshire Chamber of Commerce to proactively support the Kickstart scheme designed to help those aged 16 to 24 who are claiming universal credit and at risk of long-term unemployment. To date, over 130 Chamber members have offered new apprenticeship opportunities. The Enable service within adult services have been working to support young people with disabilities into work and are currently developing programmes aimed at NEETs. Furthermore, we are looking to support employment initiatives aimed at young people within our package of support measures within the additional restrictions grant recently allocated by government. The Council have been working extremely closely with the business community, business improvement districts, the Marches LEP, government departments, partners and stakeholders to understand the immediate requirements to support businesses and provide as much support as we can to help businesses and residents across Shropshire. The Economic Task Force brings these parties together and is made up of representatives from Shropshire Council and officers, business representative organisations including Shropshire Business Board, Shropshire Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Small Business, Marches Local Enterprise Partnership, Oswestry Business Improvement District, Shrewsbury Business Improvement District, learning and skills organisations including University Centre Shrewsbury, Ludlow and North Shropshire Colleges, government agencies, the Department of Work and Pensions, Home England, and key sectors representations from the visitor economy, construction, agriculture and farming, manufacturing, professional services, voluntary and community sector, and financial institutions. A report on the forward plan to come to January Cabinet on the economic recovery, transformation and resilience framework. This will set out the immediate response to date and the short, medium and long-term framework approach. As Council will be aware, the central government has made changes to rented evictions, meaning all notices will now need to be for 6 months. This has enabled the housing team to work directly with social housing providers and private landlords to maintain and resolve any issues. The housing team have contacted all social housing providers, are in the process of contacting estate agents in the county to advise of the assistance available in the hope of avoiding notices being served in the first place. However, if notice is served due to arrears relating to COVID-19, then the Council does have access to assistance to cover these arrears, and there is also support available to claim benefits, especially in cases where an additional an individual has not done this before, in order to ensure accommodation is suitable long term. In regard to mortgage property evictions, the council's housing team are notified of any mortgage action being undertaken by lenders and will contact clients where possible to discuss options. Further to this, there is work ongoing with the voluntary sector partners to set up and manage a court desk specifically regarding mortgage evictions, with the aim of resolving the actions being taken. The housing team will also signpost where necessary to other departments and agencies who will consist ongoing. Thank you, Ruth. You do have the opportunity to come back if you want.
Well, thank you for the comprehensive response to all of those. Just one supplementary. When will local communities be involved in some of this recovery, right? Particularly in the more rural and remote areas?
I honestly don't know. We are talking to people from all areas as part of the Economic Task Force, but if you want more specific people involved, if you let us know, we will try to involve them.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, right, so we move to item 6, which is scrutiny items, but there are no scrutiny items. So we move on to item 7, which is swimming provision in Shrewsbury. And I'm going to invite Councillor Leslie Picton, as portfolio holder for Culture, Leisure, Waste and Communications, to explain the purpose of the item. Leslie.
Thank you, Leader. That snappy title that doesn't fit on a badge.
Yes.
Right. I'm delighted to be presenting the latest update on the Shrewsbury Swimming project and to ask for Cabinet's approval to take it to the next stage. At our last meeting, well, not our last meeting, but at the meeting in February, it was agreed that there were 2 options contained within the Sport England funded study that warranted further investigation, and we committed to undertake further work to determine a preferred option. The 2 options were to look at accommodating all the facilities on the quarry site, and the second was to look at a mix of facilities over 2 sites, the quarry and the Shrewsbury Sports Village. The impact of COVID-19 has meant that this project in terms of time appears to be progressing slowly, but thankfully the significant investment in the quarry facility in May-June of this year has allowed us a little leeway. In late spring, we appointed a project manager, and shortly afterwards the Royal Institute of British Architects Part 1 study was commissioned. This REBA study looked at the capabilities and the capacities of the Quarry Swimming Centre and the Shrewsbury Sports Village sites, and indicative high-level layouts were produced. An additional piece of work was also commissioned so that we had some financial modelling for both capital and revenue. Previous discussions with and feedback from stakeholders during consultations informed this work and enabled the project team to re-examine the options and make changes. This resulted in different options being examined for both scenarios, and the detail of this can be found in the REBA options table on page 3 of the report. Upon receiving the REBA Stage 1 study and the financial modelling, the project board met a number of times. In October, a recommendation to go with option 4 was made to the cross-party members working group, who agreed with that recommendation. Let me outline what option 4 proposes. The leisure centre within the quarry would include a 25 metre by 4 lane training pool with movable floor, leisure water, a changing village, an 80 station fitness suite, 2 fitness studios, 2 spin studios, soft play area, dry changing facilities and a parkside cafe. As part of the REBA Stage 2 work, we will also look at the commercial aspects of what the centre could offer, which could include facilities such as a rooftop restaurant or a bistro, a function room, and maybe even an adventure play facility, and a wellbeing offer such as a day spa. The Sports Village at Sundawn would house a 25 metre by 8 lane competition pool with spectator seating, a 17 by 10 training pool and a changing village. These facilities will be housed alongside the current facilities at the Sports Village and would not displace any of the established activities, although it is in my view that we should look to enhance and expand the current fitness gym offer that is currently at the Sports Village. I'm well aware of the old adage that you can't please all of the people all of the time, but I do think we need a bit of a reality check around this project. We have been spoilt with the amount of water available in the Quarry Leisure Centre, but we cannot get away from the fact that the current facility is no longer fit for purpose. It's very expensive to run and now, as you heard earlier, almost impossible to maintain, to say nothing of the significant carbon footprint of the current facility. Even if it was cost effective to undertake a major renovation rather than rebuild, which it isn't, we would not replicate the current amount of water at the quarry, but the split site option does provide more water overall. We need new facilities, we need them for the current users, and we need them to attract new ones. Our task is to provide 21st century facilities that will increase and improve access to leisure for communities across Shrewsbury and Shropshire. We must acknowledge that leisure provision is not a statutory function. It should be, but it isn't. And therefore, whilst recognising that facilities such as these may require some subsidy, they should do their very best to wash their faces and be cost effective. We want to offer a better quality swimming offer, which is more accessible to more people, an option that facilitates increased participation from existing users and, most importantly, enables new users to take part. The Sport England study highlighted the changes in their thinking. It used to be all about those who took part. Now the focus is very much on those who don't. We need to get more people active, and Sport England and Swim England recognise that play in water is an essential tool. The proposed facilities at both sites will allow us to extend the offer of play in water whilst maintaining and increasing opportunities for more formal swimming and fitness. It also continues to allow for other uses of the pools by sub-aqua groups, canoe societies, polo groups and clubs, etc. It also extends the accessibility of water-based activity to a much wider local catchment area. Shropshire does not currently have a pool facility of competition standard. Clubs have to travel to swim at other pools in the West Midlands. A brand new competition pool at Sundorne will enable our clubs to return home to Shropshire, and the edge of town site and parking at the Sports Village gives easy access to the venue. I'm well aware that there are those who believe the competition pool should remain within the town centre, but previous consultations and considerations point clearly to siting it at the Sports Village. Some years ago, when it was proposed to remove the leisure facility from the quarry, there was a real fear that doing this would reduce the number of visitors and damage trade in our town. In our view, the split site option should afford us the opportunity to attract more residents and visitors to the town. For too long, the quarry facility has been hidden away in the park. Our vision is that the new facility must link with the wider quarry space and the natural assets around it. It will also complement the many and acclaimed popular events that take place in the park. In terms of finance, as I've said before, facilities such as these may require future subsidy, and COVID-19 is likely to have an impact on our options. Although option 4 is currently the most expensive option in terms of both revenue and capital, we acknowledge that quality facilities do not come cheap, and especially those that will sit within the beautiful quarry. The manner in which this project is procured and how it will be managed will influence the amount of capital required and levels of subsidy. Our prudent financial management, of which I am confident, will be crucial to its successful future. Bringing this to a close, Leader, what I have described above is our preference, and if the recommendations contained within this report are approved, then we should take the project through to REBA Stage 2. We will also undertake all the tasks listed within the recommendations. For the next stage, further meetings and consultation with stakeholders and local groups will be undertaken. Our aim is to complete this work by next May. A report detailing our final recommendations will then be brought before Cabinet in June of next year, followed by a major public consultation in the summer-autumn of 2021. I will recap the recommendations as listed within the report. Cabinet is asked to note and acknowledge progress and actions undertaken to meet the recommendations of the Cabinet report in February 2020. Agree that the new option 4, as recommended by the member working group, is the emerging preferred option for the reasons set out within this report. Delegate to the Executive Director of Place, in consultation with the Leader and the Portfolio Holder for Culture, Leisure, Waste and Communications, the ability to progress due diligence on the emerging preferred option, which will include design development to REBA Stage 2, soft market testing and economic impact assessment, whole life financial appraisal, capital and revenue modelling, management options, development of a delivery and procurement strategy, and development of programme and risk management plans. And final recommendation, agree that following the due diligence exercise, officers will report back to Cabinet for a decision on a final preferred option in June 2021, which will then be subject to a public and stakeholder consultation before a final recommendation is made by Cabinet to Council. Thank you, Leader, and I move the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Very comprehensive. I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll to second that. Dean.
Thank you, Leader. And there's not a huge amount that I can add to what Councillor Picton has already said, but there are a couple of important points that I'd like to draw out in seconding this paper. Firstly, that I believe that this to be the best of both worlds, the best of both possible opportunities. The option 4 we're being asked to agree today. It results in, as we've heard, greater water coverage, and it also increases access not only to people coming into Shrewsbury and people on the outskirts of Shrewsbury, but people in some of our most deprived communities on the north of town. Gives them equal sustainable access, walking or cycling, to swimming facilities as it does into the town centre. What I do want to highlight is the environmental improvements and the reduction in emissions that will follow on from the replacement of the quarry pool. The quarry pool, as most leisure centres are, and particularly ones of this age, is a hugely energy inefficient building. By replacing it with modern, purpose-built facilities with all of the latest technology in them, we can achieve significant reductions in the carbon footprint of our leisure facilities. So I can't see why anybody, although I expect that there will be some, but I can't see why anybody would have a problem with the option 4 that's being proposed. I happily second. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. I've got 1 or 2 members who've indicated a desire to speak, so I'll do them in the order I've listed them. So Councillor David Vasma was first. David.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that. I'd just like to say that I welcome this report and the details in it, and I do believe that the quarry pool needs to be replaced. It's very energy inefficient, and you know, I welcome the proposals that are put forward today. However, I cannot agree with option 4. I think we ought to be going for option 1. And my reasons for this is that when the protests were some years ago now, and the protests were taking place against the closure of the quarry pool, I think most people expected that it would be retained, or were campaigning for the quarry pool to be retained in the town centre. And I think option 4 is a betrayal, really, of all those protests that took place at that time. Let me just say that one of the questions was from Bernard Wills, who's the chair of the Shrewsbury Masters Swimming Club, and his view is quite clear that the pool should remain within Shrewsbury. A competition pool should remain in Shrewsbury at the quarry. And one of the reasons is that he says many competitors, for example, actually come and spend the weekend in Shrewsbury, and if we had to continue to have the pool in the town centre, this would allow people to do that and make a weekend of it and generate more income, more business for the town centre. I do worry that, you know, we are taking away a vital facility which attracts people to the town centre, and that's why I think we ought to be going for option 1. If you also, the other thing that concerns me is if you look in the papers and you look in the positives and negatives for each option, which are outlined in Appendix 3, there's in the option 1 positives, nothing is said about users. No mention is made of users. There is evidence that a lot of users support the quarry pool being in the town centre and would like the competition pool to remain there. And I don't understand why there appears to be no kind of value given to the views of the users, of the current users of the pool. And I know that we're trying to activate more people to use the pool, but surely having the pool at the centre of transport centre of transport, where money buses come into town, is a much more appropriate location than out in Sundorne, where public transport is very, very poor. Lastly, one of the things I'd like to say is that one of the things I find quite extraordinary is this council leadership has a habit of throwing away capital monies, and of course, if you look at appendix, the HLM architects provision and their estimate of capital costs, you'll see that option 1, the total cost of construction is about 25 million, whereas option 4, we're talking about 35 million. So we have a situation where I think that keeping the pool in the town centre would be a cheaper option. It'd be a more popular option. It'd be more beneficial for the town, and I think that's the way to go. The other concern I have is, and I think many people express this to me, I'm sure that the council leaders will say otherwise, but there is a suspicion around that if the quarry pool is closed and one is built at Sundorne, at some point during a period of cuts, there'll be the decision will be taken to not go ahead with the quarry or pool as envisaged, or to substantially reduce the facilities there. And I can see Councillor Dean shaking his head, but there is that suspicion. And
I'm appalled that you should even suggest it. It's very clear in the report that is not a potential future way, and I don't even want you to discuss it any further. I'm going to go to Councillor Leslie Picton to respond to some of your questions. Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I am too very, very disappointed in Councillor Vasma's insinuations at the end there. This report has been written entirely on the understanding that if it were to be a split option, both options would go forward as one project. So I can absolutely trounce any suggestion of that. I've got a few issues with what Councillor Vasma said. I mean, I think it's unfortunate, Councillor Vasma, that your representative hasn't turned up to the working group, which is a great shame. But I'd also like to point out that I can't really grasp what you mean by a betrayal, because the 2015 consultation asked, do you want a swimming pool to remain in Shrewsbury? And the overwhelming response was yes. I have to say that the overwhelming response was from members who use that facility already. So you would expect that. What the other 17% wanted, I'm not sure. That was never ascertained. However, nobody has ever asked in a consultation where the competition pool should be. And I think this is what is, and I know it's politics silly season, and I get that with the elections coming up next year, but I can't emphasise enough that swimming provision will still be, as it is now, with slightly less water, I agree, in the quarry. So your swimming lessons, your club training and all of that can take place. We are not taking any of that away. What we're doing is expanding the offer. And as Councillor Carroll said earlier on, expanding it to a much wider area. You mentioned about certain organisations saying the competition should stay in the town centre. I'm in some difficulty here, and that's why I worded what I said in the report very carefully. Because on one hand, I have a group saying that they wish to remain in the town centre, that the competition pool should remain in the town centre, and yet I've got the Shropshire County Swimming Organisation and other swimming clubs saying it would be much better if it was sited on the edge of town because of the access issues, and certainly for parking and certainly for coaches. With regards to people staying in hotels, my experience of swimming galas, and I do have quite a bit of experience of those, is that we are not attracting a huge number of people staying overnight for a county gala. You might well be doing that if you were talking about a regional gala in the 50-metre pools, but the majority of people who come to competitions in a county provision gala, if you like, are literally day travellers. They are not people who stay overnight. I also think that the competition pool, having the competition pool at Sundorne, again, offers us that option to get more people involved in swimming, because the competition pool can be used for so many different things. The amount of time that a swimming pool is actually used for competition is negligible in comparison to everything else that goes on around it. So we have to make sure that that competition pool absolutely has to be tip top for competitions, but it has to be able to be used for other things as well. And the only traffic issues that and you know, there are transport, there is transport to the sports village if you are not using a car, and there is also issues with traffic in the town centre. You know, one of the biggest, even now, the biggest complaint I'm getting about the reopened quarry is the parking situation. Admittedly, we might have made that worse by making some of our car parks free, but effectively there isn't enough parking provision around the swimming pool in the quarry. And with the best will in the world, people will always be driving to a facility because, you know, we cover a huge area in Shrewsbury. So as I said, I don't agree with pretty much anything that you said, Councillor Vasma, but I guess that's not a surprise. But I go back to the very last point you made. We are looking to build these two facilities. If this is the provision that we go down, then we will absolutely build that provision at the sports village first, and then close the quarry and build the new facility. If we can't do that, we're going to have to put in a temporary pool, which is going to cost us somewhere in the region of £4.5 million. So that extra money that you've talked about being the most expensive option, I would be wasting £4.5 million of that on a temporary pool. But I absolutely categorically state that if we're going to go down this route, we are building both facilities. Why wouldn't we? The Quarry Park is the jewel in the crown. We would absolutely be mad not to have a leisure facility in that park. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to move on now to a question from Julian Dean. Julian.
Thank you very much, Julian Dean, Councillor for Port Hill. So the first thing to say, I think, is that we've clearly come a long way since Daniel Kaczynski suggested knocking down the quarry and building a 5-star hotel in its place, and that's very welcome. I was invited onto the members group, and I'm grateful for that, but I have to say that at the time when I was there, and I did agree with option 4, I hadn't realised, as I've now discovered after a conversation this morning, that the Quarry Swimming and Fitness Forum and the QSFF haven't actually been consulted on the developments since we had just 2 options at the beginning of the year, and I think that's a real shame. And I think that, you know, in a conversation this morning, really, it sounds like all we're talking about is another 2 lanes to turn the centre of town pool into a competition pool, and to enable some of the club activities which under the current option 4 would actually have to move out of the town centre. So that's my first concern, that we do need to be consulting everybody properly during this process. And the second is to do with the sustainability and the travel aspects. I absolutely take Councillor Carroll's point about encouraging people who are not using these facilities, and especially in the north of town. But what we also need to be doing, of course, is making better the sustainable transport options from the north of town into the town centre. And so, you know, if we're tackling that, then we are also tackling the access to swimming in the centre of town, which makes it a much more sustainable option. And similarly for people from out of town, and whilst recognising that people coming from out of town will not generally be coming for just a leisure swim, and certainly not to Sundorne for just a leisure swim, given that there is leisure swimming available in many of the market towns already. The option of coming to the town centre, where you've got a combination of leisure swimming and other activities, which we know we need to support in order to keep our town centre live, is clearly the more important option to be developing in those terms. So all in all, I'm not convinced that we've got a sustainable argument for the competition pool being in Sundorne, and I think we need to continue that discussion. I take your point, Leslie, that other swimming groups are saying that, but they're saying that based on the current provision in terms of transport, and we know we've got an LTP4 coming. We know that we need to be doing something about sustainable transport into the town, and the likelihood is that the sustainable transport options from beyond the town of Shrewsbury into Shrewsbury will be to the town centre. So it seems to me, and just the final point is just to repeat that point, that we also need to be making sustainable transport available from the north of the town to the town centre much better. All of which points to having the competition pool in the centre of town, I think. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to move on to Councillor David Turner. David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you to the portfolio holder for a comprehensive presentation of this agenda item. I just wanted to really cover the point which has already been covered, quite frankly, by Dean Carroll, so I won't take very long. This is a facility for not just for Shrewsbury, but for Shropshire and for those further afield. And for them, it is infinitely easier to access the sports village than it is to access the quarry. I understand the business about using public transport, etc. I think possibly I'm the only person who's speaking from the south of the county, or the east of the county, and whilst there is public transport in places like Bridgnorth and Much Wenlock, both of which have got swimming pools, there are hectare after hectare of places where there is no prospect of getting public transport in. To that extent, this is an easy place to get to. I think it's good for Shrewsbury and it's good for Shropshire, and if I was voting, I would be supporting this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Who's next on my list? Rob Macy, Councillor Rob Macy. Rob?
Thank you, Leader. I just thought I should speak on this item. I mean, from my perspective, I've been a competitive swimmer for 32 years, a qualified swimming teacher. I've done coaching. I'm currently a master's swimmer. I've got a small baby who I'm looking forward to getting into swimming. And I've spent hundreds of hours on poolside at the quarry. And if I'm honest, most of the people I speak to, in terms of people I know within swimming and so on, are amazed we are actually building new facilities. And they're sort of looking at us in that you're so lucky that you're having to debate the options to have brand new facilities built. And I think that it's a real positive for us. I mean, in terms of people staying within the town centres, I travel to other places for masters competitions and so on, and it's not something, if I came here, that would particularly put me off attending a competition. If I know I'm going to be competing in a brand new competition pool that meets all the standards I want it to and so on, that's what I'm looking for. And then to be able to then go down and stay in Shrewsbury itself and enjoy a night out in the town, that's great. I mean, I myself have travelled to Wolverhampton for Shropshire competitions. It's not something that's ideal. The fact that we could have a competition pool in the county to host these competitions is great. I mean, I know it's a difficult balance, and as has been referenced, trying to serve the other clubs within Shropshire is a key component to this, and further afield, as well as meeting the needs of Shrewsbury. As someone who did most of their training in a 4-lane 20-metre pool, the prospect of doing this and whilst retaining the 4-lane pool in the middle of Shrewsbury as well for additional pool space for training seems like a good balance to me. So certainly I'll be supporting the proposals as they've been tabled, having read through all the reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I see Dean wants to come back, and I'll let him in a minute. I just want to make a couple of comments myself, because I've been involved with the swimming pool for a long time, certainly before Shropshire Council existed with Shrewsbury and Atcham, and it has always been a difficult problem to resolve. And I actually think what we're suggesting now is a really good answer. I was at a meeting with SALC, the Shropshire Association of Local Councils, last week, some of the hierarchy there, which included some of the local councils from Telford and Wrekin area, as well as from Shropshire. They all, as a body, think this is a really good way forward. They're very enthusiastic about the fact that there will be a pool at Sundawn, because anybody who does not live within, say, 5 miles of the town centre will find it much easier to access Sundawn than they will the town centre. I think this compromise where it's almost like I feel like the pool at Sundawn will be the Shropshire pool, and having a 25-metre competition pool, which will be the only decent one in the county, is a real plus. And the quarry will be the Shrewsbury pool for the more local residents of the town. And I think the compromise is a really good way forward. So I'm very pleased with what we've achieved. But what I would say to everybody is, remember, this is going out now to consultation. So everybody will have their opportunity to put their ideas forward, and then they will all be considered, and we'll work out if we do need to change the recommendations or not as we go forward. So Dean, I think, is next. Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. I hadn't originally intended to speak again on this item, but as a councillor for a division in the north of Shrewsbury, having lived in the north of Shrewsbury for over 20 years, gone to school and grown up here, I felt like I had to come to the defence of this end of town, given some of the comments that were made earlier in the debate, because to be quite frank, I was appalled by the attitude of the initial speaker on this debate. I thought surely nobody could have preferred the status quo with a pool that actually doesn't meet the tests for competitive swimming by any recognised body, to having a pool in the town centre and a pool at Sundawn. The only conclusion I could draw from that is that it is biased against the north of Shrewsbury, because we are not proposing to deprive Shrewsbury Town Centre of its swimming pool. We are providing a swimming pool and an increased leisure facility in Shrewsbury Town Centre, and we are proposing to provide a swimming pool at Sundawn. And to object to that, frankly, I am horrified that that should be the position that member would take, and that would seem to show some kind of bias against the north of the town. And frankly, I didn't recognise the description of the north of Shrewsbury that was painted as somewhere that seemed to be completely cut off from anywhere else, with no infrastructure. That seemed to be the impression I got. As somebody who's lived here for 20 years or more, I don't recognise that. So I just wanted to come in to leap to defence of my manner.
Yeah, I have to say I was surprised by some of Councillor David Vasmer's comments, because I presume he's talking from an official Liberal point of view, as he's standing in for Councillor Roger Evans. And I think the bias isn't just against North Shrewsbury, it's against the whole of rural Shropshire. You know, it really is a very anti the whole of rural Shropshire, suggesting that the pool should only be in the middle of Shrewsbury, which can be difficult for people living in the country areas to access, when there is the potential for a pool in both the town centre and on more or less the edge of town, quite near to the transport links. So it makes a lot of sense, especially it will have free car parking and lots of free car parking. Now, I'm not an expert on disabled facilities, but I also think that the quarry is difficult for disabled people to access. There's lots of steps, lots of different gradient levels, both within and outside the facility, and that will also be dealt with at Sundawn, which is a very flat site. So I think it's good for all sorts of people for all sorts of reasons. But I'm going to keep quiet now. I'm going to ask Leslie if she's got anything she wants to say before we move to the vote, and just see if any of the other cabinet members want to speak. So I'll ask cabinet first. So is no other cabinet members indicated that they wish to speak, but if they want to, now's their chance. No, so I'm going to go back to Leslie Picton, the portfolio holder who presented the report. Leslie, any further comments?
No, thank you, Leader. I'm happy to move as to go to the vote.
Right, so that's moved and seconded, and I'm going to do like I normally do. I'm going to give everybody, say, 10 or 20 seconds to indicate if they don't agree with the report. But other than that, we'll work on the theory that we will approve the recommendations that are on the screen now. So if anybody thinks differently, please let me know in the next few seconds. Right, I can't see any indications differently, so that report is approved and will go forward. Thank you very much. We move on to item 8, which is the draft climate strategy and action plan. And we're back to Councillor Dean Carroll. Dean.
Thank you, Chairman. This is some really good news that I hope everybody can get behind. In May 2019, Shropshire Council unanimously declared a climate emergency. And in December 2019, I stood up in our council chamber to move a strategic framework for climate change policies for Shropshire Council. At that time, I promised to introduce a climate strategy and action plan within 12 months. And in spite of COVID, here we are. The documents we are considering today are simple but ambitious. Most importantly, they are also flexible. I don't believe in dusty tomes that sit on a shelf and are only opened when we come to renew them. For me, these need to be living documents, especially in such a fast-moving sector. What we are setting out here is a three-pronged approach to reaching net zero by 2030. Power up with an ambitious pipeline of renewable energy generation projects. Power down with a significant package of measures to reduce our energy needs and become more efficient. And offsetting with a programme of carbon sequestration measures. I have said consistently since May 2019 that the period of writing and preparing these policies should not be a green light for inaction, and that is why we have been working tirelessly to bring through projects to work towards our targets. Taking just one of many possible examples from each area of work, we have already delivered a number of small-scale solar PV projects in the last 2 years, and we are awaiting final feasibility reports on a major 2 megawatt solar PV project imminently. Work to reduce emissions has continued apace and includes giving staff access to a pool of hybrid electric and soon full electric cars for business travel, and putting ourselves in the best possible position to secure significant sums from the government's £1 billion Public Buildings Decarbonisation Fund. We now have one of the most comprehensive databases of direct and indirect emissions of any major council in the country. Thirdly, the first year of the relaunched Community Tree Scheme has been a huge success, and we will be even more ambitious with the offer in future years. But these examples are just the tip of the iceberg, a foundation to the skyscraper of carbon neutrality we are building. I am ambitious for this council to be a standard bearer for the local government sector in the fight against climate change, and hand in hand with Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, which has become a successful and valued partner representing our communities, we will achieve so much for the people of Shropshire. We are on course to meet our targets, and these documents set out the processes and roadmaps to get there by 2030 and even beyond that initial vision. I move the Climate Strategy and Action Plan, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean. I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Davenport to second the report.
Yes,
Steve?
I second this report, Leader.
Okay, thank you. I have got an indication from Councillor Julian Dean that he wishes to speak. Julian?
Thank you very much, Leader. Julian Dean from Port Hill. First of all, I do welcome this report, and I congratulate the team who've been working on it really hard. And I also welcome the approach of it being a working document. I think that approach does make a lot of sense. There's a number of things, however, I'd like to draw out. Firstly, as I think the report recognises, the council's own footprint, the largest part of it is scope 3, in other words, emissions from contracts and procurement and all that sort of thing. And I'm a little bit concerned with the way that in particular the Veolia report part of the report accounts for that. Producing renewable energy through an incinerator is, first of all, actually does still produce carbon dioxide, but secondly, that doesn't put us into the negative in terms of reducing the emissions from the vehicles and from the other uses that Veolia has. So I'm very suspicious of that, and I think we need to see more detail on that, because I think the argument that the Veolia contract is somehow carbon negative is very challengeable. But in general, in terms of scope 3 and procurement and all that sort of thing, I think we ought to build in an ambition here, which is for the council to become as is called carbon literate. So I think South Somerset is now the first council to have achieved that status. Effectively, it means that something like 60% of the staff have gone through carbon literacy training, and that will enable everything that the council does to start to take on this agenda in a really effective way. So I propose that needs to be built into the plan. The final thing is, the next thing is in terms of our building programme. Really, the government is still missing the point when it comes to building, and we should by now have had a target for zero carbon homes from the national government, which they keep avoiding. But we can do it at least in terms of what Cornovy does. So I think we need to see a commitment that Cornovy is going to be building zero carbon homes from now on, and nothing else. Everything needs to be zero carbon. And the final thing is in terms of the partnership. So you've welcomed the Shropshire Zero Carbon Partnership. But my worry is that they're being made to do a lot of work that in other councils the council is paying for, and it's great that they have a team of people who are putting a lot of time for nothing to produce a plan for Shropshire. But really, if that plan is going to have the weight and the power to shift the whole of the rest of the public sector and private sector in the county, then that really does need the council to be sitting at the beginning, at the middle of that partnership, and providing some resources actually to that partnership to make it real. So I'm calling on you to put into the plan, and to certainly put into the budget next year, some funding for a climate action partnership, some staffing, and for the council to be sat in the middle of that alongside our partners in the rest of the marches, I would suggest, because it seems to me that a lot of the opportunities for shifting the area to zero carbon exist at that sort of level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julian. On to Councillor David Vasmer. David.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'd just like to support the work that's gone into this. It's very, very impressive, and I'm very pleased that we're discussing this today. My only concern is the implementation. Later in the meeting, we're discussing LED light.
Sorry, David, I seem to have lost you. You've muted yourself.
Sorry. Later on in the meeting, we're going to be discussing looking at the LED light replacement program, street light replacement program, which has been stopped. And I do worry about implementation, and I hope that Councillor Dean and the rest of the councillors put in great efforts into making sure that this plan can be implemented and achieve what we want to do.
I can assure you that the lighting is being dealt with and will be coming back on stream pretty quickly, but we were trying to do it in a more efficient and cost-effective way than has previously been the case. Right, I'm going back to Dean Carroll. Dean, any responses?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, in terms of, firstly, thank you, Julian and David, for at least welcoming the spirit in which the reports have been brought forward. In terms of Scope 3 emissions that Councillor Dean referred to, yes, Scope 3 are always the most difficult and challenging emissions to get on top of, but actually we are in a far better position than almost any other authority in the country, because we have actually measured our Scope 3 emissions, which is something that most authorities do not and have not done. Most authorities only focus on Scope 1 or Scope 2 and Scope 2, whereas we are looking at all emissions carried out in our name. Specifically on the point of Veolia, and Councillor Dean rightly questions the use of the large, heavy diesel vehicles that Veolia use. That is exactly one of the driving forces behind us looking to embrace hydrogen fuel as a fuel for large vehicles. Electric power for large vehicles often isn't the answer, because the weight of the batteries is such an encumbrance that they become unviable. That's why we started investigating the prospect of using hydrogen fuel as an answer. We're working with Midlands Connect, we're working with the Midland Energy Hub, we're bidding into government funding pots, we're working with national universities, universities of national and international standing on this. We are working with multinational companies on this, and we are leading the way as one of the pioneers in terms of local government of hydrogen fuel, because electric isn't the answer to every vehicle's emissions. So that, firstly, that addresses the Veolia point. On the wider scope 3 point, the direction that we're moving in is gradually, and I don't want anybody to think that we're going to go tomorrow into contract negotiations and make any demands, because that's not how this works. But the direction we're moving in is that we will start to be expecting our contracted services to be delivered more and more sustainably. And we are realistic to accept that not all services will be able to become carbon neutral on their own. But that is where Shropshire Council, as a carbon credits broker, comes in, that we can then take in-kind contributions to offset the carbon produced through Scope 3 emissions that cannot be completely removed. But I think that we would all be surprised at the ambition, actually, of some of these private companies to become carbon neutral. I'm aware now of a small road maintenance contractor that's actually using as a selling point the fact that they can repair and maintain roads carbon neutrally. And that's something that's very early days, but that's something that I would expect and we should be encouraging to be rolled out across that and other sectors. Coming on to carbon literacy training, that's something that we were beginning to undertake before the COVID pandemic hit. Face-to-face training sessions are obviously out of the question at the moment, coupled with the fact that so many of our staff across the council have been rightly redeployed to deal with the COVID pandemic. That is something that we haven't started off again yet, but it is something that we will start off again once we return to a bit more business as usual. I can't comment on government building targets other than to say you're aware of the responses that we've made to government consultations, which have been to ask them to be more ambitious in terms of sustainability targets. Coming on to SCAP, Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, why aren't the council doing the work? Well, it's very simple. It would be so easy for the council to sit here and write a strategy and say, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and we're going to sit here and tell you what to do. But that's not the approach that we've taken. The approach we've taken is we will lead by example, but actually it's government and private citizens, it's businesses and private citizens that are responsible, and other public sector bodies that are responsible for the other 99%. So actually they should be involved in drawing up the plan of how the rest of the county becomes carbon neutral. And this climate action partnership, compared to some that I've been made aware of, is an awful lot more pragmatic and successful in terms of its capacity and scope. And like you said, I have massive respect for the time that everybody involved with that has given. We've got people contributing from the point of view of environmental action groups. We've got people from the charitable sector. We've got people from the town and parish council sector. We've got businesses. We've got landowners. We've got citizens who just have an interest or perhaps a skill set that has been underutilized because they've been furloughed during the pandemic or they've taken early retirement. And bringing all of these people together that otherwise may not have got around the table has produced a far better end result, which I believe we'll see before the end of the year, than we would have achieved if, with our limited resource, we'd attempted to mandate how the county should respond. So that would be my answers to Councillor Dean's questions. In terms of Councillor Vasma's questions about implementation and funding, I have complete confidence. It's a small, but it's, as I term them, elite group of officers who work on the climate change task force. They are fully on top of all of their briefs, and we couldn't have got to where we are without them. So a huge debt of thanks we all owe, myself especially, to them. I don't believe that we will have a problem in terms of capacity to deliver, because, as I have said in the past, we shouldn't look at the climate change task force as the council's sole source of environmental impact. We have taken a decision, and we took it early doors in this process, that Shropshire Council would have a green thread that would underpin every part of its work. And I have seen evidence that that green thread is now running throughout this council, including the estates, the major projects teams and the commercial teams. And they are the colleagues who will help us carry forward and deliver these projects. We've had fantastic backing from finance colleagues, from legal colleagues, and we have been looking for external funding, government funding, Salix interest-free loans to increase, to multiply the work we've been doing. Our initial funding is basically gearing money. How much more can we bring in on the back of that? And that is what we are doing. So I'm not saying that we can do everything overnight, because that's never possible. However, what I am saying is I am comfortable and I am confident in the skills of our team and in the support they are getting from the whole rest of the council to carry forward this ambitious programme of work that will take us on to 2030 carbon neutrality and beyond. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Dean. We're making huge steps forward, and a lot of that is down to you and your force of nature that you're pushing forward on it. So thank you. Right, there is a recommendation on the screen, and again, as before, I'm going to sort of accept that that's been moved and seconded, and unless anybody indicates differently in the next few seconds, that will go forward as the recommendation from Cabinet. So I'll give you a few seconds just to indicate if there's any other thoughts. No, everybody's quiet. So that recommendation will be approved and go forward. We move on to item 9, Q2 Corporate Performance Report, and I'll invite Councillor Lee Chapman to present the report. Lee.
Thank you, Leader. The period covered in this corporate performance report is from the 1st of June to the 30th of September, Q2. The framework is derived and consistent with our corporate plan and the high-level outcomes that form the framework of that, and they are divided across 7 key outcome areas. I'll take the opportunity to highlight a few. And it is also worth mentioning that on the report, there is the link there to the online performance portal, which the data on there is updated as more data becomes available periodically. So members will be aware of the difficult period that we continue to experience because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think it's fair to say that there's significant impact on that written across this report. And rightly, members and officers and our communities have been prioritising supporting our communities during this difficult time. And so our interpretation of what a healthy environment is in this context is probably very considerably different to when we last thought about a healthy environment. This period covers part of the period was during a lockdown for this quarter. And in fact, if we take the libraries and the visitor economy in the healthy environment section, we'll note that libraries were closed for 1 month of this period. But despite that, and because of that, the library service particularly worked hard responding to those individuals who were forced to spend much more time at home, and brought in quite a few interesting measures. Poetry reading online, one-to-one sessions, outreach, click and collect for books. And in fact, we've seen a very significant 166% increase in our e-loans, and we've seen over 1,000 more online members. So a real demonstration there of what additional support our libraries have provided to our communities. In the section A Good Place to Do Business, we have seen significant economic impacts and significant increases to people claiming benefits. And I think helpfully, the leader has talked through some of the partnership work that we've been doing in that respect in his answer to the member question earlier in today's agenda. Throughout these performance reports, we've taken the opportunity each quarter to concentrate on a particular area for performance. And the concentration on this report, the area chosen is adult social care. Just a couple of items I'd like to highlight. The integrated hub, which was established as a result of attempts to escalate and improve discharge from hospital during the pandemic, just demonstrated how successful working in that fashion in our acute hospitals could be when we saw the average wait reduce from 103 hours to 37 hours. So a 64% increase, very considerable and valuable work being done by colleagues across adult social care and the health economy. We've been very conscious during the pandemic of the potential isolation of carers, and particularly when so many of our offers to carers involved them attending face-to-face events for support. So we took the decision early on to increase the support and increase the nature of the support that was provided. And so they've been holding events like virtual cuppers, one-to-one chats, digital support for those people looking to access more resources via the internet. We've also seen significant ongoing work with 2 carers in the car, which first established in July 2018 as a pilot, has now spread right across the county with 6 contracts concentrating on admission avoidance. And that service has now undertaken over 5,000 visits to date. In more people with a suitable home, it's very pleasing to note that Cornovi Developments Limited, which is our wholly owned housing development company, is planning 1,000 new homes between now and 2025, and indeed the first 3 sites have already got planning applications in, so we'll be looking forward to that significant contribution to providing more people with a suitable home. There's one remaining area that I'd like to highlight. It's an area of challenge, and it's covered in the section Care for Those in Need at Any Age. And those of you who've studied the report will note that during the period of this quarter, we've seen an increase the number of children being looked after has increased up to 445 at the end of Q2. The impact of this on the council's finances, and not least to those children who find themselves in care, is very significant. And I'm aware that our portfolio holder, Ed Potter, who I'm hoping will second this report, I think would like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges involved with this. So the recommendation in the report is that you consider the emerging issues that I've highlighted and others in the report, and that by looking at the performance portal as data is updated, any issues highlighted can be considered in greater detail and referred to performance management scrutiny for further work. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Lee. So I will now go to Councillor Ed Potter, who happens to have the portfolio holder for Children's Services. So if you can talk a little bit, Ed, about children in care, that would be good. But can you second the report first? Ed.
Brilliant. I'm happy to second Councillor Chapman's report, and thank you very much for a very detailed overview. Just in terms of children's services and the increase in the looked after children population throughout Shropshire, first of all, I make no apologies for this increase, because it is of utmost importance that young people and children within Shropshire are kept safe, and that is our #1 priority within children's services. Obviously, we want to maintain as many children as possible with their families in loving family homes, but there are occasions when this is not possible, and children do have to come into the care of the local authority. Obviously, in terms of COVID, we have seen a large increase in the number of children enter the looked after world. This is for any number of reasons. Neglect is one of the key issues we see within Shropshire, but this can just stem from a variety of sources, whether it be mental health issues, financial pressures, family breakdowns, domestic violence, substance misuse, alcohol misuse, that has a negative impact on the lives of children, and for their own safety it is important that they are removed from settings which they are in and into the care of the local authority. In terms of our increase in numbers, we're also seeing significant delays in children leaving the care system through the courts. There is delays within the court system, which is having an impact on children progressing out of the care system, whether it's back into family situations, whether it be with connected guardianships, connected members of the families, whether it be aunts, uncles, grandparents, relatives, through special court orders. And this is having an impact on meaning there are a lot more children within our care at this present moment in time. Moving forward, the impact of having schools closed for a significant period of time has been well documented, and I think I've talked about this in the past. And the mental health around children's mental health and young people's mental health is particularly important. And the impact of COVID, I feel, is going to be something we have to live with as we emerge from the pandemic and move forward. There is no quick fix for this, but I'd just like to thank all the staff and social workers and managers within children's services who have worked tirelessly on the front line throughout the pandemic to ensure that young people and children within Shropshire are safe. They're particularly our sort of family support workers, our social workers, who are front-facing and have put themselves forward at all times to ensure that young people are safe. And I'm happy to second Councillor Chapman's report.
Thank you very much, Ed. I find it slightly disturbing that the court system is holding up us actually getting children out of the care system, and I will be asking questions outside this meeting to see if we can resolve that in any way. But it's a difficult situation with COVID and the pandemic, so I'm sure it's not just it's not unique to Shropshire. I know all councils are having the same problems, but I do think the government need to try and find a way of dealing with that so that we can get children back into to give them the most optimum way forward. Right, anybody else got any comments on this report? So I'll do what I normally do. We'll note the recommendations unless anybody indicates differently in the next few seconds. No, it's all quiet, so we'll note the recommendations of item 9 and move on to item 10. The next few items are very much about the financial situation, and item 10 is financial monitoring 2021 quarter 2. And I'm going to ask Councillor David Minery to introduce the item. David.
Yes, thank you, Leader. As you say, the next 5, I think it is, are all mine, but mostly there for information rather than decision. There is a decision needed in this first one, though, which is the third of the recommendations. The other 2 are really for noting. I've no intention of trying to go through the report page by page because it's quite a long report and carries a tremendous amount of detail. But I will just sort of point to 1 or 2 things, if I may. The first being that there is at the moment a projection of an overspend for the year to 31st of March 2021 of about 2.7 million, which has grown from the potential overspend reported for the first quarter. So obviously action is required, and action is already underway to tackle that, and management are working on that as we speak, and in fact have been doing so for quite some time. The situation, while serious, is nowhere near as bad as it has been at this point in the financial year for each of the last 2. So yes, we're concerned about it, and yes, we need to get it sorted out, but it's by no means the level of work that we've been looking at previously. As we go through the report, Leader, I would like to just point to 1 or 2 things. The first is Table 1, which is in paragraph 4.3. Table 1 shows each of the service areas and how they are faring in relation to the original budget. And anyone looking at that can see very clearly that there are significant pluses and significant minuses right the way across the board. Children's services has already been mentioned this afternoon, and you can see there that at the moment it's expected that's going to be £6.6 million overspent, and that predominantly is in relation to the issues that have just been mentioned, which is the number of children in care. And I did note your comment about the courts, and it really is unfortunate, but the pandemic has meant that normal court services have been interrupted. The legal team are working flat out to try and resolve these things, but some things are just outside of our control, unfortunately. You'll note that the corporate budgets are actually producing almost £10 million less cost than they were expected to, which is a positive. And place, as with children, as we all know, is also suffering a lot of pressures, principally, I was going to say, caught between principally and predominantly. Principally is due to the pressures of dealing with COVID and, of course, substantial amounts of lost income. As far as savings are concerned, a little bit further down the report, paragraph 5, I think it is, there are a list of savings that are no longer felt to be feasible. They amount to some £6 million, so efforts have got to be made to try and mitigate that. Otherwise, it's just going to come out of the financial reserves, which we really don't want to be doing. The other thing that I need to talk about or just mention briefly is growing pressures. They now amount to around about £9.5 million. Paragraph 6.3, paragraph 7 deals with those. The next section of the report deals with the capital programme. There are some changes to that which are detailed. Where are we? Paragraph 8.1, I think that is. And then finally, the report concludes with a brief reference to the pocket parks funding. You'll note that the third recommendation today is to agree that Shropshire Council acts as the accountable body for the pocket parks programme, which just means that we will receive the money and dole it out, but we will be the ones to keep note and do the reporting on it. So those are the 3 recommendations, Leader, and I'm happy to move them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll second the report. Somebody needs to mute their microphone. We're getting feedback. And moving along, looking at who wishes to speak, Councillor David Vasmer. David.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to pick on one point which Councillor Minery mentioned, was the increase in revenue overspend this year to 2.77 million, and refer back to the Q1 monitoring report, which stated that management action across all areas of the council is now required to attempt to bring the budget back into balance. It's not clear what action is being taken or is being taken, and Councillor Minery did mention this, but I'm wondering whether I was hoping that in a future report we can have a detailed list of what action is being taken, because my concern is that we will get to a point where we'll have to make drastic cuts in order to balance the books, and I think we all want to avoid that.
I can give you a reassurance that we will not be making any drastic cuts certainly in this financial year, and I don't believe we will need to in the next financial year, by prudent management and to be honest, by keeping the pressure on officers to keep within all the budgets that they produce. It's a challenging time. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that has given us extra costs. But generally, I think we've done very well, and I'll be surprised if the 2.7 million we're looking at the moment isn't dealt with by the end of the financial year. If you look at the last 3 years, I believe, when we've been going through the year, we've always been predicting huge overspends. But when we get towards the end of the year, we get them under control, and I'm sure that will happen again this year. So I'm quite content with the situation in a very, very challenging year. I don't know whether Councillor David Minery wants to say anything before I move to a vote.
Yes, Leader, just very, very quickly. I mean, there are 2 issues really. One is the various management actions, and normally that's not included in any reports to Cabinet. That tends to go through the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee, and I'm sure Councillor Wilde will be bringing anything forward through that committee that she feels is worthy of note. And the other thing is, had it not actually been for a very important piece of work that the council is doing, we would have made significant inroads into it already. And the piece of work I'm referring to is the safeguarding and the protection of the homeless during the COVID crisis, because this is not being fully funded by government, unlike many of the other costs that COVID has heaped upon us. We've taken a decision very, very early on that nobody should be left lying on the streets. Everybody should be accommodated. That has had a little bit of beneficial support, I suppose, for the hotel industry in Shrewsbury, but has been a tremendous cost to this council, because government only pay round about £13 a night towards the accommodation. And as you can imagine, they're not going to get any accommodation in Shrewsbury for as little as £13 a night. So the council is bridging that gap, and that is likely to cost thick end of £2 million over the course of a year. So, and that is completely new initiative, and had it not been for that, we'd be sitting here today looking at a budget that virtually balanced. But I would challenge anybody to say that we were wrong to go in that direction. I think that's a very vital piece of work that the council's doing, and you're quite right, Leader, we will find the money from somewhere as we go through the year.
Okay, I've got Councillor Robert Macy's who's indicated he wished to speak. Rob.
It was just picking up on Councillor Minory's point of the actions we've had to take due to COVID in regards of housing and temporary accommodation in particular, and it has been, we did see a surge in numbers through the year. I mean, it's a good point at this point to thank all of those bed and breakfasts and the hotels and others that have helped us out. They've gone a long way to really helping this council address the needs that we've had in terms of housing. And just on the longer term, obviously council and cabinet passed allocating funding for a longer term strategy for temporary accommodation. And it's just to assure people that that is ongoing throughout all of this, putting in place longer term steps for dealing with this. But in the short term, I agree with Councillor Minory, we've taken the right approach to this, and it's created a short term pressure for us. Thank you.
Right, and we've also got Councillor Pauline D wishes to say something. Pauline.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent report and all these savings, but I just wondered on the amount of homeless, has, because of the generosity of Shropshire Council in perhaps generosity is the wrong word, but the ability to see that we ought to be looking after the homeless much more than perhaps we have done previously. Has there been an increase in the numbers of people coming from elsewhere into Shrewsbury, and that has exacerbated the problem of getting the extra finance?
I'll ask Rob Macy if he's got the answer. We may need to give you a written response on actual numbers. Rob.
Yeah, I'd rather try and get you with the exact response, and I'll speak to officers and ask you them to supply you with the information, Pauline. But yeah, from that perspective, no, we have taken the approach of people need to be housed and looked after. I'm not aware of a specific pressure that you're talking about in regards to that, but I will ask officers to come back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay,
right, so unless anybody indicates differently, there's a recommendation up on the screen, and as normal, I'll give you all a few seconds to indicate if you're not happy, but if not, we'll go with the recommendation as it is on the screen. So I'll give you a few seconds. No, there's no indication differently, so that is accepted and will be implemented. So we now move on to item 11, Treasury Management Update 2020-21, Quarter 2. Back to David Minory. David.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief on this one. I'm sure everybody by now is very familiar with this quarterly report, which shows how the council investment team are performing against the national sort of benchmark. And as always, one of these days it might bite me in the backside and we won't have done it, but every single time I come to present one of these, I'm able to say with some pride that our team have managed to exceed the benchmark yet again. This time an additional income of £204,000 during the quarter, which is more than welcome given the context of the previous discussion. But there's no decision to be made here, Leader. It is just a matter of noting, and I move that it be noted.
Okay, I'm happy to second that, and again I'll just give people a few seconds if they want to indicate differently, but I do think this is very much a matter of report. Nobody seems to be indicating any differently, so that report is accepted. So we move on to item 12, and we're back to you, David.
Yes, Leader. This is a highly technical paper, setting of the council tax base. Of course, it is a very, very important part of our proceedings, because without this being agreed, nobody's going to be able to set a precept next year. So it's really important that this is done and done properly. The report does contain within it a change, and that's to do with the effect of the policy change that was been previously agreed about vacant dwellings and the council tax premium that we apply. The government some time ago allowed that to go up to 300%, and we decided that we would do that, and so this particular report includes the impact of that. And if you can see in the recommendations, 2.1 does refer to it. And it's a highly legal document, so I will take the trouble on this particular one to actually read it out rather than just let people see it. So recommendation 2.1 is in accordance with the Rating Property in Common Occupation and Council Tax Empty Dwellings Act 2018 to approve the revised discretionary power to levy a council tax premium in relation to dwellings which have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished for more than 10 years, i.e. increasing the premium to 300%, in relation to dwellings which have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished for more than 10 years, and the resulting inclusion of an additional 197.00 Band D equivalents in the tax base. Of course, the main reason for doing this, Leader, is because nobody likes to see property standing empty and unoccupied. Properties are for living in, not for collecting dust. So that's the reason for that recommendation, really. Apart from that, it's the usual fare, and I'll move the whole of the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm quite happy to second it. I'll give everybody a few seconds to indicate it any differently, but other than that, we will approve the recommendations. I'm looking round. I can't see any indications. No, so that item is approved. So we move on now to item 13, the financial strategy. Back to you, David.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is another long document, but it's important that people realise this is the opening salvo, really, in the process of setting the council tax and the budget for 2021-22. A long report, as I say, and as I did with the monitoring report, there are one or two things which I would just like to highlight as we go through. So in considering the report, members will need to recognise one important factor, that we still do not know the extent of government support for the next financial year. An announcement is due between now and Christmas, but as of today, I have no idea what it is. So we've had to move forward on an estimation of what we expect it to be. And of course, if that varies considerably, then we may need to reconsider some of the figures that are in this report. In the same way, in the same vein, we don't know what the continuing situation is going to be in regards to the pandemic. I have at this point, I think, to be fair, and we're not always fair to the government of the day or whatever particular colour it is, but I think I do have to be fair to our government today, that they have not been backward in coming forward when it comes to covering the additional costs that we faced. The support, and it's contained within this report, actually, there's a long list of the payments that have been received from government, and I won't go through them. I'll leave members to find them and see it, but it is a significant amount of money that has come in from government. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So again, we've had to make some assumptions. Those assumptions are built into this report, and if by the time we get to February, it's clear that those assumptions are incorrect, then there will have to be some revisions to the figures. I also have to say that just draw attention to the fact that as far as the revenue from council tax is concerned, members will know, I'm sure, that there is a cap on normal council tax of 2%, and in recent years we have been providing for that increase annually. But for the last few years there's also been adult social care surcharge that we've been able to levy of 2%. Government have recently said to us that that can go up to 3%. So for the purposes of planning, the 3% figure has been used in this report. It's not to say that that'll be the position when we get to February, but we have to put something down upon which yourself and everybody is going to go and consult.
So the decision today is simply to approve this document for consultation. It will go through the scrutiny process. It will go out to various stakeholders and partners, and in the new year we will return to, I'm sure, a report that looks slightly different to the one that's before us today. So it is, in that sense, Leader, it is just a formality. It's the starting pistol. So I move the recommendations.
Thank you, David. I'm happy to second the report. I've got Councillor David Vasma wishes to speak. David?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to pick up on the previous strategy that we've been using in the past, is to kind of make savings through cuts, one-off government funding, and using this financial strategy reserve to balance books in the absence of fair funding. And this is going to come to an end, I think, in 2022-23. The financial strategy reserve will mainly be used to balance the proposed 21-22 budget, and the funding gap is projected at 46.45 million in 2022-23. On page 29 of the report, it makes clear that without fundamental change proposed by fair funding, Shropshire Council simply does not have the tools in the box to resolve this issue. And whilst obviously we all hope that fair funding does come, I wonder what sort of plans are being made to deal with what could be a very difficult and threat to the council's economic standing.
I'll partly respond to that, and I'm sure David will want to say something as well. The difficulty is some of the financial gap that exists is made up by one-off items from government to do with housing and social care supplements, etc. And the report has been written on the basis that we will lose all of those. Now, I don't believe that will happen. They are changing the way they finance local government, but I don't believe that we should work on the theory that all that money will suddenly disappear. Now, to be fair to the accountants, they only go with what they're guaranteed, and they are guaranteed certain amounts of money. I don't believe it will be the government's intention to take off some of the one-off funding that I think comes to somewhere near £27 million a year. I don't believe there's any intention to get rid of that, but to build that more into the base budget and to the base of the money they send us. But I haven't got a crystal ball, which is the problem, and neither of our financial team. So this is very much written on the basis of let's take the safety precautionary way forward and predict, the worst possible outcomes. I believe they will be much better. I am disappointed that the work they were going to do on the comprehensive spending review and fairer funding has been delayed, because it's been promised for about 3 years now. And if they do what they have indicated they intend to do, Shropshire Council will be some millions of pounds better off, mainly because of the numbers in adult social services. If they start taking children's services into account as well, that will help us as well. We do have challenging budgets, let's not kid ourselves, and it has been difficult. I believe we've managed those budgets extremely well over the last few years, but yes, it is right to say that if they suddenly stopped all the one-off funding and just gave us our base budget, we would struggle. But I don't believe that will ever happen. I do have faith in them to keep the level of funding to Shropshire as at least as much as it now, but I actually expect it to go up considerably over the next few years once the comprehensive spending review and the fairer funding regime comes in. And I've been doing a lot of work with the County Council's network, who do plug into Robert Jenrick and government ministers quite often, and the indications are good. But until we see the money on the table, we always have to be cautious about what we say. David, is that a fair comment?
Absolutely, it is, Leader. Not much to add to that, really. We are quietly being assured by MPs that nothing to worry about. The government are making it clear that we're not going to lose out and we should be better off. But it's the frustration. Had we been able to move to the sort of the better funding, the chart that everybody's looking at in the strategy there for the period up to 25-26 would actually be filled in, and we'd know exactly where we were standing. And yeah, I take the point about being prepared for emergencies and disasters, and we are, of course, and at the back of our minds we have ideas of where we would find the money, but at the moment, there is no point in airing any of that. We're talking now about 2022-23. It's a long time away from now, and even 21-22 is probably going to change out of all recognition from what you're seeing today. As I said, this is really just the start of the process, but I would like to just add to your reassurance, Leader, that we are managing the money well. We are aware of the potential to save more should we need to, but that's going to involve significant cuts in services that none of us are prepared to make. So I think that probably sums it up.
I would refer, Councillor Vasmer, to the financial strategy report we just considered a few moments ago, because it does show the extent of our reserves, which are quite large. They're all earmarked for various projects, and it's not money that we can just slosh around. But if push comes to shove, there would be the opportunity to move money around if we needed to. But we're trying to protect those reserves all the time and put the pressure on government to give us more funding. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, but I'm confident that as we go forward, the economy of Shropshire Council is in good condition. Right, so that was, I'm losing track of the numbers now. That was item 13. The recommendations are on the screen. I'm just going to see if anybody indicates they wish to speak, but if not, I'll do like I've done previously and give you all a few seconds just to indicate if you disagree with the recommendation. There doesn't seem to be anybody indicating differently, so we'll assume that recommendation is accepted by members, and we will move on to item 14, which is the Treasury Strategy Mid-Year Review. David.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is very similar to the quarterly one, only in this incident, this is the actual strategy document itself, and within that is written a requirement for us to review it every half year, which is what today's report deals with. I am pleased to draw attention to paragraph 1.2. Which says that the internal treasury team achieved a return of 0.62% on the cash balances, outperforming the benchmark by 0.68%. Now, I need to explain that. The reason why the figure is lower than the benchmark, why that difference is because the benchmark is now gone into minus territory. There are many financial institutions now charging people to look after their money rather than paying them interest. It's a dreadful state of affairs when we're trying to get some return on the cash that's sitting in the bank, but nothing we can do about it because we're not allowed to take risks. So we just have to put it in these places. But anyway, £603,800 additional income for the first 6 months of the year, not to be sneezed at, and I again congratulate the team for all their hard work. The recommendation is a simple one, which is just to accept the position set out in the report, that there are no fundamental changes proposed to the actual strategy, which is the real purpose of today's discussions. Thank you.
Okay, happy to formally second that. And I'm just, as usual, I'll give you all a few seconds to indicate if you're not content with the report. Other than that, we'll accept the recommendations. Nobody is indicating any dissent, so those recommendations are accepted. And we'll move on. Item 15, the land at Shrewsbury Flaxmill compulsory purchase order. The item has been withdrawn, and I always get it wrong, and this is at the request of Historic England. I never say it quite right, but they asked us to put it on and they've asked us to take it off. So we then move on to item 16, which is to exclude the press and public, and I'd like to move that we resolve that in accordance with the provisions of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 and Para 10.4 Part 3 of the Council's Access to Information Rules, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items. I'm going to ask the Deputy Leader, Councillor Steve Chalmley, to second that.
Yeah, happy to second that, Leader.
And again, I'll give people a few seconds to indicate if they're not happy, but other than that, we will accept that exclusion. Nobody's indicating differently, so that item is accepted. So we're going to exclude the press and public.